Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you, so let's begin. My name is George, and I want to start this off with a question. How can you help fund someone's wedding, and they don't want you at the wedding? I mean, how does that even begin to make sense? But apparently, that's exactly what happened between me and my wife's sister. What I did next changed everything. Now, let me walk you through exactly how we got to that point. I've been married to my wife for 10 years now. We've built a home together, raised 2 beautiful kids, and through the ups and downs, I'd still say I've had a happy marriage. My wife is my partner in every real sense of the word, steady, reasonable, and loyal. And her dad? I actually get along with him pretty well, too. He's the type that doesn't talk too much, but when he does, he means every word. He reminds me of my own father in some ways. My wife and her dad are more like my kind of people. But I'll be honest with you. There are 2 people in her family I've never truly clicked with. Her mother and her younger sister, Christina. From the very beginning, it was clear I wasn't their pick. They have been this way from day one. It's like no matter what I did or how respectful I tried to be, I was always the outsider, the one who wasn't good enough or didn't quite meet the standard they'd made up in their heads. And mind you, I've never disrespected them. With Christina in particular, I could tell her dislike was personal. She always had this subtle way of throwing backhanded compliments, sarcastic remarks, and things like that. Over time, I just stopped trying to be seen in any specific way. I told myself, you're not married to them. You're married to your wife. You didn't choose them, and they didn't choose you. And that's okay. Still, even after 10 years of being part of their family, that cold shoulder never really warmed up. And yet, I never let it get in the way of how I treated them. I've always believed that your character should stay the same, no matter who's watching or how they treat you in return. But that history sets the tone for what eventually happened between me and Christina. Because when someone keeps showing you you're not welcome, you don't forget it. Even when you're the one paying for their big day. So, last year, my wife came to me with a request. She asked if her younger sister, Christina, could come stay with us for a little while. Her exact words were, she's going through a rough time, and I just think it would help her to be around family for a bit. Now, I'm not the type to turn my back on family, so I said yes without asking too many questions. At that point, I assumed a little while meant maybe 2 weeks, 3 at most. Just enough time for her to catch her breath, regroup, figure things out. Later, I found out what the real rough time was. The issue was that Christina's fiancé had once again pushed their wedding further down the road. Apparently, this wasn't the first time either. They'd been engaged for years, and every few months, there was always a new reason why the wedding couldn't happen yet. Still, I didn't question her being in the house. I told myself, hey, if she needs a break from all that mess, at least she's got somewhere safe and quiet to stay. But here's the thing, Christina never liked me, but I let it go. I didn't marry her. I married my wife, and that's who I'm loyal to. If hosting her sister made my wife feel better or gave her peace of mind, then I was okay with that. Weeks turned into months. What I thought would be a brief stay slowly stretched out into 3 months, then 6. Then, before we knew it, it had been an entire year. 12 whole months. Now, you might wonder, how do you live under the same roof with someone who clearly can't stand you for a year without blowing up? Well, the answer is simple. Space. Our house is pretty big, and the way it's set up, there's a guest suite upstairs, and my home office is tucked away on the main floor. Christina mostly kept to herself. She didn't eat with us that often, and when she did, the conversations were short and surface level. I didn't go out of my way to talk to her either. We lived almost like distant roommates. She had her space, I had mine, and that was fine by me. I wasn't looking to be best friends. I was just trying to keep the peace for my wife's sake. So yeah, 1 year under the same roof. Not because we were close. Not because we enjoyed each other's company. But sometimes, for the people we love, we do things that aren't exactly comfortable. So, one evening, I was in my study going through some emails and paperwork. After a while, I decided to head to the kitchen to grab a glass of water before calling it a night. But as I got closer to the kitchen, I heard voices, my wife's and her sister's. They didn't know I was coming, and something about the tone made me stop in my tracks. Christina was crying. Her voice was shaky, like she was holding herself together just enough to speak. She was talking to my wife, and I heard her say the wedding had been postponed again. Her fiancé had apparently invested all the money they'd saved for the wedding into some Ponzi scheme, then lost everything. And now there was no wedding, no plans, no timeline, nothing. What stuck with me was the way she said, "I just want it to be a special day, something memorable." She sounded tired, tired of waiting, tired of getting her hopes up, tired of watching her future push further away every time life knocked them down. I didn't want to interrupt that vulnerable moment between two sisters. I only stood there for a few seconds, then turned around and went back to the study. I closed the door gently. The next morning, my wife and I were sitting together in the kitchen, sipping coffee like we usually do before the day kicks into gear. Then I leaned back a little, looked at her, and asked, if money weren't an issue, "Do you think your sister would finally be getting married?" She didn't hesitate. "Yes, absolutely," she said, like she'd been waiting for someone to ask. That was all I needed to hear. I nodded slowly and told her, "All right then. I'll fund the wedding. Everything. But I don't want the credit. Let's keep it between us." I wasn't looking for applause. I just wanted to help her sister move forward with her life. Maybe if the wedding had happened, everyone could breathe a little easier, including Christina and her fiancé. My wife looked at me like I just handed her a mountain she didn't expect anyone to move. I could tell this meant something to her. From that point on, she took the reins completely. I gave her access to my credit card, and she handled every call, every meeting, every detail. We booked a beautiful venue. She lined up the catering, the florist, a DJ, and even luxury transportation. She didn't stop there. She got a photographer, videographer, makeup artist, and yes, even a honeymoon package. Everything was coming together. But somewhere along the line, Christina started becoming very vocal about what she wanted and how she wanted it. She wasn't just involved in the planning anymore. She was demanding. She started pushing for upgrades. The flowers weren't lush enough. The caterer wasn't elegant enough. She wanted a different style of chairs, a more expensive cake, extra photographers, and longer limo service hours. Everything we'd planned and budgeted for started getting stretched, then pushed, then flat out ignored. My wife would come back with new requests from Christina, things that clearly went beyond what we had originally discussed. And every time I'd ask, "Didn't we already agree on this?" she'd give me this tired look and say, "She's just stressed. You know how weddings are." I didn't argue. I let it slide, but the line between grateful bride and entitled bridezilla was starting to blur. So there was this family dinner organized by Christina for her family and family of the groom since the wedding plans were rolling. The whole idea was to come together and have a nice evening before the big day. When we got there, the atmosphere felt warm enough, but here's the thing. Despite being there, the way my mother-in-law and Christina looked at me felt somehow different. They didn't say a word to me that felt genuine. What made it even more frustrating was knowing the truth about where the money for all this was coming from. My wife doesn't have a steady job. She's not working. So all the money for the wedding is coming through me. But none of that mattered to them. So even though it stung, I kept quiet and focused on the bigger picture, because this wasn't about winning anyone over. 3 days before the wedding, I came home from work and immediately knew something was wrong. I met my wife looking like she was carrying the weight of something she hadn't figured out how to say yet. I dropped my keys on the table, walked over to her, and asked, "What's wrong?" She hesitated. Then she finally looked up and said, "My mom and Christina, you shouldn't come to the wedding." I just stood there for a second. I was stunned. "They said what?" I asked. She looked down and repeated it. "They said it's a family-only wedding." As if I weren't part of the family. My wife told me she tried to talk them out of it. She told them it didn't make sense, that I was her husband and the one making all of it possible. But they brushed her off and laughed. "What's he going to do?" they asked. I didn't raise my voice or ask her to choose sides. I just nodded and said calmly, "Okay, I won't go." That was it. That night, I opened my laptop, pulled up the vendor list, and started making calls. One by one. The venue? Cancelled. The catering? Cancelled. Photographer, DJ, the florist, the limo service, even the honeymoon bookings. I canceled everything that had been paid for in my name. And yes, I lost money. Some of the vendors had non-refundable deposits. Some charged penalties for short notice. I took the hit. But at that point, it wasn't about the money anymore. It was about self-respect. If they could carry a grudge against me for no reason after all these years, then maybe it was time I stopped being the one trying to earn approval I was never going to get. My wife found out the night before the wedding. She asked, "Did you cancel everything?" I didn't lie or dodge. I looked her in the eye and asked, "Why should I pay for something I can't even attend?" She didn't say a word, but I could feel that she was upset. Maybe I didn't tell her first or acted without warning. And I get that. So here's what I heard happened on the wedding day, because of course I wasn't there. Guests began arriving early that morning, dressed to the nines. But when people started showing up, the place was completely shut. The doors were locked. As guests stood around, confused, some of them started trying to call the bride, others knocked and peered through the tinted glass. But there was no movement inside. No lights, no setup, no coordinator. No tables, no chairs, no flowers, no music, nothing. Just an empty building. Some people tried reaching Christina. Some tried calling the groom. And then the messages and calls from the vendors started coming in. That's when the truth emerged. Every single service had been canceled. Now here's the part that really makes this wild. Christina and her mother still showed up, fully dressed for the occasion that simply didn't exist anymore. And they showed up thinking everything was fine. From what I heard, Christina was completely stunned. She couldn't process it. Her mother looked like she was about to pass out. They tried to call the vendors themselves, only to hear the same thing. That's when the fiancé, who up to that point had been silent, apparently exploded. He turned on Christina right there in front of their guests. Told her that this was all her fault. Said he told her not to uninvite me. He had warned her that doing something like that was petty, and it could backfire. But she didn't listen. She insisted I wasn't welcome. And this was the result. From what I was told, it was chaos. People started leaving. Some were angry, others just uncomfortable. But no one stayed, because there was nothing to stay for. Later that evening, Christina came storming into our house like a hurricane. I was in the living room. The front door slammed open, and before I could even stand up, she was in front of me, red in the face, dressed in what was supposed to be her wedding gown, makeup smudged, and fury in her eyes. Her voice cracked from how hard she screamed. "How could you do this? You humiliated us." I could feel the chaos still clinging to her, but I didn't yell back. I looked at her and said, "You're ungrateful, and there's no point in trying to please someone who has never appreciated me." She went silent for a split second, like the words stunned her. Then she shouted that she would never forgive or speak to me again, that she was done with me forever. I didn't argue. Honestly, I wasn't even concerned about her reaction. It wasn't her I was thinking about in that moment. It was my wife. My wife had stayed quiet all day. She hadn't spoken to me about what I did, but I knew from how she moved around the house without a word that she was upset. She hadn't said it, but I could feel it in the silence. I didn't regret standing up for myself, not for 1 second. But I did care about how it affected my wife. We've been married for 10 years, and through everything, she's been my partner. So I made it my focus to fix what mattered, us. I didn't chase after her sister. I just tried to sit with my wife, to talk when she was ready, and to listen when the words finally came. Eventually, she sat next to me that night and spoke her mind. She said that her mother and sister were wrong. What they did by excluding me from a wedding I was paying for was unfair and cruel. But then she also said something I had to take in, that I shouldn't have canceled everything the way I did, that it was too much, that even if I was hurt, there could have been a different way to handle it. I nodded. She was right. I had let the years of being disrespected pile up and explode in one single act. Looking back, maybe I did go overboard with my actions. I should have found another way to make my point. It's hard to say when emotions are that raw. But I do know I never wanted to hurt my wife in the process. That part was never the plan. But now I want to hear from you. What do you think? Was I wrong? Or was I just finally drawing the line after years of being pushed aside? Leave a comment and let me know. Thank you for watching. And if this story meant something to you, please like and share.